Hi, welcome to Moveeno Recap. Smashing the subscribe button is very valuable to us, so go ahead and leave us a like. Sit back and enjoy.
In a post-apocalyptic world ravaged by nuclear war, a man is tied to the front of a vehicle, leading a convoy of modified chariots. The land is desolate and devoid of food, and the only ruler with access to water is Immortan Joe, who is plagued with tumors and can only survive with the help of a respirator. In this world, all of Immortan Joe's followers are anemic and require regular blood transfusions to survive. Max is the only healthy person, and he's being used as a human blood bag while hanging upside down. One day, Immortan Joe sends Imperator Furiosa to gather more blood, but she suddenly veers off course without authorization during her mission. Immortan Joe's son, who is a dwarf, witnesses the events and informs his father. Enraged, Joe takes his men and sets out after Furiosa, who has taken not only 10 tons of petrol but also Joe's 5 wives. Max is still being used as a blood bag and is strapped to the front of the vehicle as they pursue Furiosa with a fleet of modified chariots. These boys, who are covered in white, have been raised from a young age and brainwashed to see Immortan Joe as a god. Nux, one of the boys, is particularly devoted and becomes excited just by being near Joe. The boys believe in Valhalla as a sacred place that can only be reached by those who die bravely on the battlefield. Meanwhile, Furiosa's convoy is speeding ahead, but the boys in the front of the car spot a flare in the distance, indicating that Joe has found them. To make matters worse, they find themselves entering Vulture tribe territory and are pursued by several hedgehog chariots. The Vultures even lay a trap with a steel cable to overturn the lead chariot, but Furiosa acts quickly and manages to avoid it. The Vulture tribe has a reputation for not playing by the rules, and they ram into Furiosa's convoy with their spiked chariots, attempting to puncture the tires and stop them. However, the war boys retaliate with an exploding spear, and one of them even manages to destroy a Vulture chariot with a cannon. Taking advantage of the chaos, Furiosa takes control of the car's throttle and presses on. Furiosa uses her crossbow to destroy another Vulture chariot, taking out 2 vehicles in the process. However, a spiky digger is approaching from behind, slowing them down. Immortan Joe's convoy catches up, and they decide to deal with the Vultures before pursuing Furiosa further. One of the war boys grazes Max's scalp and throws a spear, while another shoots a hooked rope to hold the enemy back. Nux seizes the chance to crash, causing the hedgehog skull to come off immediately. A war boy attempts to attack but gets hit by a crossbow bolt. Without fear, he sprays paint on his mouth, signaling that he's heading to Valhalla. He then grabs his explosive spear and jumps, choosing to die alongside his opponent. His teammates witnessed his honorable death, which sent them into a frenzy. They began throwing spears at the enemy until Nux's car was hit, causing him to spin and reverse into the opposing digger. The team then took advantage of the chaos and attacked relentlessly, ultimately destroying the car's chainsaw after a frenzy of bombardment. 3 grenades dropped to the ground, causing the chariot to explode into scrap metal. The Vulture tribe was defeated, but a massive sandstorm suddenly appeared on the horizon, making even the mighty chariot seem insignificant. Max, tied to the front of the vehicle, was filled with desperation. Meanwhile, the war boys turned their attention to attacking Furiosa's chariot relentlessly. However, they encountered an unexpected setback when Nux's car suffered a flat tire. In an attempt to add weight to the car, the war boys tried to untie Max's chains and move him to the back, but he saw an opportunity and kicked one of his opponents off the car instead. As the sandstorm approached, Max attempted to climb inside the car to take cover, but Nux had closed all the windows. With the car now caught in the midst of the terrible sandstorm, Max was forced to hold on to the chains to avoid being swept away by the yellow sand and lightning flashes. Meanwhile, Furiosa's chariot, due to its weight, was able to smash the other cars to pieces. Caught in the sandstorm, the car ultimately exploded, causing Nux to become even more frantic. He caught up with Furiosa's chariot, accelerating with all his might. Filling the cabin with petrol and spraying silver paint on his mouth, he grabbed a torch and attempted to kill Furiosa. Max intervened, trying to stop him. In a moment of panic, Nux slammed on the brakes but was directly hit by an oncoming truck from behind, causing the car to be torn to pieces and throwing both of them out. When they regained consciousness, the sandstorm had dissipated. Max struggled to get up from the sand and attempted to free himself from the chains, but it proved impossible. Suddenly, he noticed a chariot not far away. Approaching the 5 women, Max discovers them in a bath and recognizes them as Joe's wives. He uses a gun to force them to help him untie the chains, and they all escape from the desert together. Unbeknownst to Max, Nux had also sneaked into the car from the back. As they travel down the valley in the chariot, they are suddenly ambushed by bikers. The bikers are also interested in the 10 tons of petrol, and their leader orders the rocks to be blown up to prevent Joe from following them. They then chase after Furiosa, easily leaping over the surrounding slopes while frantically throwing petrol bombs at the chariot. As the chariot burst into flames, Furiosa activated the push shovel at the front to throw sand and extinguish the fire. In the meantime, Joe's convoy was blocked by debris, but his chariots were large and varied, allowing him to easily overcome the obstacle with one of his Bigfoot chariots. The bikers continued their attack on Furiosa's side, forcing the two to take cover in the cab and fight back. With accurate point-blank fire, they eliminated the bikers one by one, but Joe's Bigfoot was still gaining on them. As Joe prepared to fire at Furiosa, a pregnant woman suddenly opened the door. Joe hesitated upon seeing the pregnant woman carrying his child, a son. He put down his pistol, but instead leaped in front of the chariot. His eldest son then shot a hook lock that caught Max's steering wheel, trapping his hand. Joe's wife saw this and helped him cut the chain. In a desperate move, Furiosa uses a spanner to secure the steering shaft, preventing the chariot from crashing into a boulder. However, Joe's wife falls off and is killed when Joe changes direction to avoid her. The baby she was carrying also dies. Joe, enraged by the loss of his wife and child, orders more convoys to pursue them. Max manages to evade them, but is too scared to stop. He asks Furiosa about their destination and she reveals it to be Oasis, her home and possibly the last sanctuary for humanity. Meanwhile, Nux experiences a change of heart and no longer believes in Joe's cause. Joe's wife convinces him to join them on a trip to the Oasis. During their journey through the night, their chariot gets stuck in a swamp while being pursued by Joe's convoy. In a desperate move, Furiosa shoots out their searchlights with her sniper rifle. They use the hinge to rescue the chariot from the swamp, and Max placed mines to destroy Joe's chariots, causing a chain reaction that stopped the convoy. This allowed Max to escape with more time. While traveling, they encountered spooky crowmen on stilts in a swampy area. The sight was surprising to everyone, especially Max, who couldn't believe there was an oasis. After a night out, they arrived at the oasis that Furiosa remembered, but it still looked like a desert. Furiosa got out of the car to investigate when a motorbike rider suddenly appeared. Furiosa's clan informed her that the swamp below the Raven's Man used to be an oasis but had turned into a toxic wasteland. This devastated Furiosa, and she collapsed to her knees as her last hope faded. That night, she bid farewell to Max and resolved to lead her people in search of a new home for their survival. Max didn't decline and instead caught up with Furiosa on his motorbike the next day. He showed her a map indicating the location of Joe's base, which was lightly guarded due to his troops being deployed. Max suggested seizing the base as there was an abundant water source for farming. After a brief moment of contemplation, the group agreed to the plan. The group drove their chariots towards the base, but Joe's men detected Max's trail, prompting them to consider turning back. However, they were soon ambushed from all sides by Joe's army, including a powerful race car that relentlessly attacked Max. Even the old lady joined in the pursuit. As anticipated, the war boy climbed to the front of the car and desperately sprayed gasoline into the engine. The chariot's acceleration was immediately evident, allowing it to overtake and rain down spikes on its pursuers. Unfortunately, Furiosa was unable to evade them, and her tires were punctured. To make matters worse, Joe's convoy launched various attacks against them. The vanguard positioned themselves on a 5-meter pole and launched attacks on Furiosa's chariot from all sides. They utilized smoke bombs and even attempted to strangle Furiosa with a rope. Fortunately, the old lady intervened to aid Furiosa. Meanwhile, the large army at the back shot hooks into the chariot's oil cans and lowered their plows to increase the ground friction, causing the chariot to slow down. Meanwhile, Max was at the back of the chariot, attempting to sever a chain. When the chain finally snapped, the resulting inertia was so strong that it could overturn a car. Suddenly, a member of the vanguard descended from above. He enters the cab and takes one of Joe's wives. Joe is pleased that one of his 5 wives has been rescued. Meanwhile, several members of Vanguard board Furiosa's chariot. Max rushes to the front to assist and manages to push an opponent off before falling off the vehicle. Luckily, Furiosa grabs him by the leg and saves him. As the enemy chariot approaches Max, Furiosa skillfully maneuvers to avoid collision. In the process, a car in the middle is destroyed and explodes. With Nux's assistance, Max jumps onto the other vehicle and removes the driver before taking over control. Joe retaliates by commanding his men to chase after Max and attack him with flames. Furiosa responds by ramming and destroying the enemy vehicle, just in time to save Max from being burned alive. As the tanker blaze intensifies, Max takes control of the accelerator pedal from a corpulent passenger. Max joins Furiosa on her chariot just as the tanker detonates, causing significant damage to Joe's convoy. Despite the explosion, Joe's forces continue their pursuit and attempt to impede Furiosa's progress by placing a foot in her path. To keep driving, Furiosa hands over control to Nux. Furiosa plans to assassinate Joe, while Max takes on the task of battling the massive guitarist atop the sound system. One of Joe's wives pretends to surrender and goes to Joe's vehicle to assist Furiosa in boarding the chariot. Max attempts to distract the son, but he proves to be too formidable. During the fight, Max's toy-like presence was no match for his opponent. However, Furiosa managed to sneak up and climb into Joe's car, using a hook and chain to grab onto his respirator. She then threw the chain into the tire, instantly killing Joe by ripping off half of his face. Max quickly pulled Furiosa into the car and the crowd began to move towards the Bigfoot. Nux chose to stay back and block his pursuers, letting everyone else go first. The group had previously passed a cliff, and the man who was knocked unconscious suddenly woke up and saw that his father's chariot was being taken over. Out of rage, he ripped the engine out of the chariot. Nux was shocked by the big man's incredible strength and couldn't believe what he was seeing. With the chariot now powerless, he sacrificed himself to hold off the pursuers and ensure the others could escape. In the end, Furiosa led the group back to Joe's base, and upon seeing Joe's dead body, the refugees' emotions reached a boiling point. They swarmed in to tear him apart, while chanting Furiosa's name. The city guards also surrendered, making Furiosa the new leader and savior. Meanwhile, Max quietly blended into the crowd and left all the credit to Furiosa, who would go on to build a new home for the survivors. If you enjoyed this recap, please subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on notifications to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching.